Hey, welcome back to the 167. I'm here with Rachel Heidrick.
Hi,
How's it going?
it's going well. I'm excited to be here today.
Well, welcome. Rachel works for a organization called the 199, and it's like 1/99, right?
Yes, yes.
So, and it's an organization that you work with people who struggle in the sex trafficking industry
Mhm.
and people that have been trafficked previously.
Yes, yes. This is a community reintegration program. So when individuals make a decision to come out of trafficking, there's basically three tiers. The first one being crisis intervention, and they'll go to that place and they'll, just provide shelter and basic needs until they can get placed into a long-term restorative care program. And then that restorative program and addiction treatment is about 6 months to 18 months. And then we're that final tier, which is community reintegration. So we have a home that we've been renovating in Olathe, and it's livable now. It has a few things left to do, but it's
I've seen the pictures. It looks great.
yeah, it's really come a long way, and it has taken an army to do that, but God knew what we needed. So yeah, it's really cool.
Well, welcome to the 167, and it was so great to see you guys last week here at New Life. You got a chance to speak and tell us a little bit about that as a congregation, but I wanted to do a little follow-up on the podcast for anybody that was more interested or maybe missed it on Sunday, so we can talk a little bit about what the 199 has been doing, kind of how it started. And so what I'm understanding you say from that is, so if somebody is in trafficking and they run to the nearest safe space and they say, hey, I need to get out of this, there's that tier one where it's like, okay, we're just going to take you and hide you from the people who are abusing you.
Mm-hmm.
Tier two is, let's deal with any addictions that you have, anything, that you really need to work through that trauma.
Mhm.
And then you guys are working with, how do you return to normal?
Yes.
Like, how do you live a normal life?
Yes.
So tell me a little bit of, like, what are some of those things that people are struggling with? They're coming out of trafficking, and you're like, we really want to teach you how to have a bank account, hold a job. Like, what are some of those things that you're working with?
And individuals that by the time they get to us, it's very interesting because depending on their age and their years of experience, some of them will have kind of come in and out of trafficking because of that struggle of trying to find, I think, just to believe in what God has for them, honestly.
Mhm.
Sometimes that's really scary. And so they come with different skills. Some of them will have had a job and tried to live on their own before and just really struggled. And so they have a little bit of that experience. Others will come to us having never done that. As we know, about 50% of individuals trafficked today are children. And I always say, I think probably the other 50% went into it as children,
yeah.
or just maybe a little bit older, so they don't have a lot of the skills. So we're working with them on everything from figuring out transportation, figuring out how to apply for a job, if they want to go back to school, how to apply, how to get a financial aid, how to even just get a Medicaid card or get their driver's license back. Some of them will have entanglements with the law because a lot of times a trafficker will push those individuals they're trafficking out front so they don't get in trouble. So sometimes
So there might be warrants out for their arrest,
yeah. Or they're working with a probation officer. We've had a few, referrals of individuals that are working with an officer, and this is, part of their probation is, getting help and getting back into the community. So it's there's just so many layers to it, and everybody's a little bit different.
Yeah. Well, I know my wife and we had worked in foster care previously in Jackson County on the Missouri side, and there's that relation and that correlation between girls who go into foster care and age out of foster care and almost immediately are trafficked.
Yeah.
Kansas City is a very, very big hot spot, of course, because we're I-70, we're I-35, we're in kind of the middle of the country, and people are not only trafficking them from Kansas City, but people are coming to Kansas City to essentially swap,
Yeah.
to children or women who are being abused. And so it's really, really big problem here in KC.
It is. It's so sad. I'm excited the fact that I think there's just a lot of organizations on all levels that are rising up in Kansas City and all over. And people have a lot more awareness. If you talk to people about it 10 years ago, they didn't really have a clue. A lot of people have heard of it now. They may not know a lot of the details and what it looks like, but that is so true about foster care, though. A lot of these individuals have vulnerability in their background, right? They didn't come from stable places or have good family support, and so they're already vulnerable to that, the way that traffickers groom. A lot of people think traffickers, are snatching people out of Walmart and things like that. Not to say that doesn't happen, but usually it's like through a personal relationship. A boyfriend. Sometimes, sadly, there's a high percentage that it's a spouse or even a family member. So. Well,
and is those some of the biggest contributors when you're talking about reintegrating them? And you're saying some of them come in and they come out. What are those the continual struggles? Like, I don't have any family support. It was easier when I was in this just because of the trauma attachments. Like, what are some of the things that draw people back into that lifestyle?
Yeah. I think you hit the nail on the head. The not great support from family, or they try to go back to family that's toxic, right?
Oh, yeah.
And then then they spiral. It just kind of sends them right down the same path. Also, I think they just because of that trauma bond, and that person provided for all their basic needs. Their life may have been HE double toothpicks, but
right.
They provided for everything. So then to come out and try to figure out, okay, how do I get a driver's license? How do I pay my bills? How am I gonna get this job? And then if I'm at my job and I am triggered today, who's gonna understand that I might need a minute? And I don't know if I'm safe to tell this person that. A lot of them, they feel safer on the street, honestly. They don't know who they can trust. It sounds strange.
But it's familiar.
Yes, right. And I've had one of them say to me, everywhere I've been, you can't set something down, somebody will steal it, So they know, at least they know,
right.
And then they come into this normal life and they're like, can I trust you? This person's super nice to me. I don't know if I can trust that.
Right.
Yeah.
And what drew you personally to this ministry?
I had heard about it probably 15 years ago, and it just broke my heart. And at that time, I had teenagers too, so I was just hyper aware about it. But then 11 years ago, I went to Chiang Mai, Thailand, with a group from my church on a mission trip to Abba House. And that is a ministry for children who've been trafficked. They rescue them off the street. Some of them have been trafficked or at risk. And wow, my heart was just broken. I was wrecked. Really all of us that went. Lori Jonas, my daughter Hannah, they were both involved in this. Lori's a co-founder, and they were both on that trip. And so that was kind of where it began. And then I have a background of occupational therapy, so I love that, helping people achieve independence.
Yeah.
And so those two just married together, and God just kept giving me visions about this through the years. So in 2019, it was kind of like, okay, it's time. It's time to start pursuing this.
Awesome. And then did you join the ministry that was already going, or did you start it from scratch?
We at that time, we were beginning to start it from scratch, and then we kind of took a little detour. We went with Rended Heart, which is crisis intervention, and I think they're doing some reintegration now. They're in over in Grandview. At that time, we thought maybe we'd go under their umbrella. It did not work just because of the distance and kind of the different visions of what we were doing at that time. They are wonderful, and Denise gave us an opportunity to really volunteer and work with survivors for about 9 months. And then honestly, the Lord said to me, hey, I called you to lead this. And it was kind of like a wake up moment where I had sort of been hiding behind everybody else, with something that he called me to do. So we came back to the table, and by 2021, we got our nonprofit status and started in. We got a home donated and everything that year, so.
What are some of the, like, maybe just one, like a success story that you've seen with some of these women? What is it that really sets you on fire? You're like, oh man, they're getting it. Like, where do you see them succeeding?
Yeah. You know what's exciting to me when I see an individual, first of all, come to us and say, hey, I'm ready to be baptized. That's huge. I love that because it just shows that, the Lord has been working on her, and it's been many, many seeds planted before she even came to us. But also I think it's when, we see a lot of back and forth. Like today, it's like, I can't do this, I'm leaving. And then the next day, it's like, I want to go to that job interview, and I'm kind of having to learn, this is a roller coaster. I'm really having to dig into God, like, God, carry me through, don't let my emotions go with theirs, because they're dealing with a lot of fear, and we have to just kind of walk alongside them and say, okay, what do you want to do now? I've said before, hey, that kind of sounds like a step backwards, but I understand how you're feeling. What can I do to help? And so that's kind of our role.
Yeah.
And sometimes that's hard, because as a mama, I want to say, you need to do this. Can't you see it?
Well, everybody wants the quick fix. Everybody wants you're baptized, you come out, and you never have a craving anymore.
Right.
It's that long-term integration that's really hard. It's hard to take somebody who's in a cycle of poverty and teach them how to be independent. It's really hard to break all those.
Yes.
Cycles.
And you can give them all the tools, but God has to break their poverty mindset, right? He has to do that for all of us, right? I mean, we have these huge blessings and we know they're there, but that requires something of us to step into it. And then, knowing that that's going to require some responsibility. And so for everybody, we all kind of struggle with that. But then when you come to it with having lived a poverty lifestyle, in every single way, that's really hard to break. But God, really.
Absolutely. It really is the death to the old life, and new life. You have to have a whole different perspective on life. You have to get to that fed up point where you're like, I'm done with this.
Yes.
And that's, like you said, it's a multi-stage process where you might take 2 steps forward and 1 step back, and then it's hard to just be like, hey, they took 1 step forward.
Yes. Yes.
And not get discouraged in that.
Exactly.
That's great. So this might be a weird question, but so like I have 2 teenage daughters, both of who came through the foster care system. So we're talking about, a lot of people get trafficked by boyfriends, family members, people who are close to them, or just on the internet to get catfished.
Yeah.
For a parent like me, what are some things that I can put in place to help my daughters in that scenario, to be like, you have a stable household? What are some things that I can do to help them kind of prevent that? Because like you said, as parents, we're always like, they're just going to get snatched out of the park, and that's not really usually what happens.
Yeah.
What are some of the warning signs I could look for, or what are some of the things that I can put in place for my daughters to kind of protect them in that?
Well, I can tell you, from an experience of my friend that I've met through this whole process, her daughter was trafficked as a teenager, and they provided a very good home for her, but she was also a foster adopt, and she had been very young when they adopted her, and had a great childhood and everything, but some things made her very vulnerable. She had gotten in contact with her birth family, and they had exposed her to some things. The other thing was just that searching, I think. And in that searching, she met this young man who seemed to do all the right things, and even to her parents. And I think I can't really speak for my friend whose daughter this happened to, but I think if she could go back, she would have vetted this kid more. and really put some more safeguards in place.
Was it on the internet they met or in person?
In person, they
Wow.
were over at Johnson County Fair in Grandview. But also when you talk about, the phone, my heart goes out to you. I mean, my oldest now is 31, and that was right when that was kind of starting.
Yeah.
And I remember saying, oh my gosh, I feel like all her friends are in the living room with us. Like, because we were literally right at that breaking point where kids didn't have phones, and then all of a sudden they did, and their
Right.
friends could text them at any moment. And so,
It's like a sense of always being available and interrupting.
yes. So it was like you were kind of, all of a sudden, I really was in that place where your family space was being invaded without your permission, really. And I would go back and do some things different. I would have restricted my kids more, or said, you can't have your phone past 9 o'clock or something like that. It seems cruel, but
You're like, that seems cruel. Like, you have no idea the rules we have in our house. Like, our girls, they don't have phones. They're 14 and 13.
good for you.
We know that's fast approaching because they're going to start driving. But we're probably going to have a third phone that they can use.
Mhm.
And Apple has some great, with Droid, you usually have to get a third-party app. Apple, you can just turn it all off. Like, you can go into the settings and say, if you're playing a game, you cannot play with other people online, or you can play with other people online, but you can turn off the chat features.
See, you know more about this than I do.
Oh man, I've had to read up on it.
I'll bet.
Our kids, we're the meanest parents on the block, maybe in Gardner.
I love it.
So we just tell them, like, there's the thing called screen time, so it only unlocks from a certain time, and so they can basically text their friends from like 4 to 6.
I love it.
And
I
that's
love
it.
it.
So like once dinner time happens, that's our time.
Yeah.
So
I
they hate
mean,
it. But
People may not like to hear this, but I don't think they should allow phones in school. I mean,
oh no, absolutely.
we
not.
all survived without that.
Yeah. Put a payphone in the lobby.
Yeah.
Did you have to do the thing where like we would call collect? Like if I needed a ride, I'd call my mom collect and be like, I'm at school, go pick me up, and then they'd
Well,
be like,
I lived across the street from the school,
oh, you
so.
But we did that, and like I said, with our girls, they don't have social media. They're just,
Yeah.
their brains aren't developed enough to process that.
Right. And honestly, I think it is such a time, I don't know, it just takes all your time that you could be using to relate to people.
Right. But I think
Yeah.
you and I probably have the burden of knowledge. Like if you're a nurse or a doctor, you see, like you're like, oh, you can't take that. Like you have that burden of knowledge of seeing kids with broken bones.
Yeah.
Don't get a trampoline.
Yeah.
Like, and for us, like we work with people that suffer
Yes.
because of being catfished online.
Right.
Like
Yeah.
the anxiety that it creates. And I'm just like, no. And so I'm coming home looking at my family going, absolutely not. You can't do that. So it's that
Yeah.
burden of knowledge.
Yeah. Well, your kids will thank you. They may think you're so mean right now, but I have to tell you, I mean, all my kids are in their 20s and now, 31, and I have 4 of them. And every one of them in different ways have come back to me and said, okay,
Yeah,
that
just
was
hang
good.
in for the next 15
that was
years.
good. Yeah, exactly.
Well, thank you so much for coming on and telling us about the 199. Like I said, I think it's incredible what you guys are doing, because there's so few ministries that do that long-term care,
Yeah.
that are really committed to helping people reintegrate, that don't just, are there for the, like you talked about, it's the seed planting and the harvesting,
Right.
but to walk with somebody,
Mhm.
that is so hard, and just, I commend you for doing that. If people are listening and they want to get involved, where can they go? How can they help out?
Yeah. First of all, we'll take all of your prayers. This
Yeah.
is definitely, it's a, like you said, when you're walking this out with people, it's challenging, and it's spiritually challenging,
Mhm.
and I always have to be surrounded by people with, that are good spiritual support in that way. But our website, 199JOCO, so 199JOCO.org, is a great way. Get on there. They can contact us. They can give. I have a page on there listed just different ways you can contribute. We have quarterly volunteer trainings, which is trauma-informed care with a gospel perspective. We feel very excited about our training. We just feel like we bring in the gospel, because Jesus, he was the original trauma-informed, walking this earth. So everything we need, we can learn from him. And that trauma-informed care training is for the ladies who want to work with our participants.
Yeah.
So,
And is this a great ministry for, let's say, like some retired ladies, got some wisdom, they got some time?
absolutely, yes, yes. In
Yeah.
fact, I have a friend who's going to come in and do Bible study.
That's
And
awesome.
she's retired, yeah, and she's going to be amazing. So, yeah,
Very cool.
sure.
Well, thank you so
Yeah.
much for coming on. Thanks for visiting us last Sunday. Like I said, I think this is just the beginning. We'll try and check in with you occasionally and,
Awesome.
and
Love it.
just kind of help out any way that we can, because I think this is an incredible ministry. You're really, finding people
Yeah.
that really need that help and walking with them.
Yeah, thank you so much, Lucas. I appreciate it.
Hey, thanks for coming on today. We'll see you guys here next time on the 167.